the President of the Japan National Council of Social Welfare.
Well, thank you very much. First of all, on behalf of Japan National Council of Social Welfare, I deeply apologize to you for the inconvenience with the online problem now. Well, again, on behalf of Japan National Council of Social Welfare, I would like to welcome you all to NEA Regional Conference 2021. It is our great pleasure to be able to host this online meeting, and I'm very glad to see you all, respected colleagues of NEA gathering from Hong Kong, Korea, Mongolia, Taiwan, and Japan. Thank you all very much for taking your very precious time to participate in this conference. The theme of this regional conference is building an inclusive welfare, community welfare, no one left behind, looking ahead a world after COVID-19. In each NEA member country region, the COVID-19 pandemic has brought about many restrictions on economic activities or social life, and consequently, various difficult challenges of daily life or employment have been revealed. Therefore, it is necessary for us to support isolated people with various problems of their lives without leaving them behind, and to build an inclusive society where they lead to decent life and social participation, as well as to accelerate infection control of COVID-19. It will be consistent with the idea of SDGs to realize a society where no one left behind. So to put it into practice, it is important for us to build a social welfare community which takes advantage of local characteristics with creativity and understanding, and cooperation of administration, local community, as well as social welfare workers, towards our common goal to build an inclusive society, welfare community. It will be quite important and meaningful for share our concerns and directions in each country region during this regional conference. I wish to see inspiring discussions in this conference, and it will be productive and fruitful to you all. Last but not least, I hope the network within NEA region will be deepened on this special occasion so that our alignment and cooperation will be formed to make a prosperous society together with social welfare workers in NEA region. Thank you all very much.
Seike会長、ありがとうございました。
You're welcome.
続きまして、国際社会福祉協議会北東アジア地域会長のジョイス・ゲン・フェン会長よりご挨拶をいただきます。
Thank you very much, Dr. Seike. Next, we'd like to ask Professor Joyce Peng Yan, the President of Northeast Asia region of ICSW, to say hello to us. Professor Joyce, could you on your mic?
Professor Yan. Professor Yan.
Mute.
Professor Fan,
you might need to unmute.
please unmute. Your mic is off. Professor Fan, we cannot hear you.
Cannot?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you so much. Sorry for the technical problems. Now I started again. President of Japan National Council of Social Welfare, Asushi Seiki, ICSW Global President and the President of Korean Council of Social Welfare, Sam-Muk-soo, Chief Executive of Hong Kong Council of Social Service, Hoi Choi, President of UASWO, Suchir Bachulu, President of Taiwan Council of Social Welfare, Chen Fenling, Honorable keynote speaker, delegates from member organizations, presenters, ladies and gentlemen, good morning.
Morning.
Thank you. It is my pleasure to join the opening of this 2021 ICSW Northeast Asia Regional Conference online with all of you. On behalf of the regional members, I would like to first extend my deep gratitude to our host, the Japan National Council of Social Welfare, under the great leadership of President Seiki, to organize this regional conference as was planned, even under the circumstances of the unexpected COVID-19 pandemic, changing from on-site visitation to online conference so well. Furthermore, the JNCSW made a generous decision to cover all the expenses for this regional conference to alleviate Northeast Asia agents' financial burdens. Thank you, Seki-san. Thank you.
You're very welcome. I deeply appreciate your warm note. Thank you.
My obliged. And thank you, Sasaki-san, for your diligent communications. As what we share with ICSW global community members in the newsletter issued at June 2021, that maybe we were not the worst cases, but each of our Northeast Asia members had been facing as many social and economic challenges as our counterparts all over the world. Social welfare systems are under severe scrutiny while the pandemic situation carried on without any sign of stopping yet. Social division, after the necessary social distancing and the forced social lockdown, became inevitable. Global solidarity and international collaboration is needed to help one another come up with better and innovative solutions right now. Therefore, it is such a timely theme of this regional conference, building an inclusive welfare community where no one left behind, looking ahead the world after COVID-19. Thanks to the keynote speaker and all the presenters, we may share and exchange experiences to encourage each other. Even though I feel very sorry that we cannot meet in person and we miss the chance to visit those impressive Japanese social welfare agencies this time, I do value this one and only, I hope, online regional conference as a special mark of our long-time good relationship among us members in the Northeast Asian region. At last, may I make 3 wishes. Wishing we'll have a good conference today, wishing you all stay safe and healthy, and wishing we will meet again in person soon. Thank you.
Joyce 会長、ありがとうございました。
Thank you very much, Professor Yan. Now, I'd like to invite Dr. Susan Mark from Global Social Welfare Conference.
Good morning, everybody. Hello. It's very nice to meeting you all online. And first of all, I'd like to thank President Atsushi Seike and the Japan National Council of Social Welfare for preparing this very important conference today. I would also like to thank President Joyce Yan-Feng and the Taiwan Council for their efforts in supporting the conference as the regional president. And it's also very nice to meet participants from Hong Kong, including Mr. Ho-Wai Choi, and Mongolia, including Suochiru Bachulan. Before starting this conference, I would like to share situation of ICSW Global Office just briefly. ICSW hosted 3 international seminars this year, and as the outcome of the seminar, a book on ISWED conference we conducted instead of the Rimini one last year will be published through the Springer, and also a book on ICT will be published through Routledge. Finally, we are also trying to publish another book on food security and social protection issues through Routledge. Lastly, the next year's Joint World Conference will take place in Seoul, maybe about this time of the year, both online and offline. I sort of looking forward to the meeting everybody from the Northeast Asia region, perhaps the offline, if the COVID-19 situation permits. After almost 2 years of the outbreak of the COVID-19, it is expected that the COVID-19 pandemic will gradually come to an end with the COVID-19 vaccination. But in the post-COVID-19 era, various social welfare issues will emerge, and discussions about these issues are very essential. As a response to the world situation, Korea National Council on Social Welfare and the International Council on Social Welfare recently held a 3-day conference in here to deal with the social issues that are newly emerging due to COVID-19. Particularly under the influence of COVID-19 virus, the digital transformation of the economy and society as a whole is rapidly taking place. And this digital transformation raises the need to develop differentiated welfare services, such as non-face-to-face care services and digitization of welfare programs in the social welfare sector. And as the COVID-19 is not a problem of just one country, the new social needs of the social welfare community also require very close cooperation between countries. Therefore, information exchange and sharing of experiences and knowledge among countries in the North Asia region with a similar social welfare development experience and culture will be of great help in establishing and developing new social welfare service system. I hope today's presentations by experts from 5 countries will be a great opportunity to share experience and strategies for building an inclusive welfare community in which no one is left behind in the post-COVID-19 era. I also look forward to close cooperation and partnership among ICSW Northeast Asia region members in the coming years. Thank you very much.
I just mentioned that we need in some way to fundamentally rethink the nature of human economic activities and our relationship with the environment. But fortunately, several years ago, even before COVID-19, there was a movement to fundamentally rethink the nature of conventional economic society and capitalism, such as the Sustainable Development Goals, or SDGs, of the United Nations. The basic principles of this SDGs are sustainability and the idea that no one will be left behind. Needless to say, these two pillars are deeply related to social welfare. I started talking about COVID-19 and then went on to cover a wide range of topics such as climate change and SDGs. In other words, what I think this shows is how the field of social welfare or welfare has become more expansive than ever before and is becoming deeply intertwined with the nature of economic society in its entirety. Therefore, I believe that it is important to think of social welfare or welfare as something that covers an even broader scope than before. Now that I have talked about the bigger picture, I'd like to move on to look at the specific situation surrounding COVID-19 in a little more detail. The slide you are looking at now shows the countries with the highest number of deaths due to COVID-19. The United States in the first place, followed by Brazil and India. In red are the so-called Western countries, including the US and the UK and Italy. In Asia, as you know, the so-called Delta strain spread rapidly in Indonesia, and the number of deaths increased rapidly here. The next slide shows the number of deaths from COVID-19 in several Asian countries, including the countries participating today. Here we see that the number of deaths is much lower than the countries in the previous slide. Therefore, when we look at international comparisons, we can say that the performance of East Asian countries in terms of COVID-19 response is relatively good. However, in the case of Japan, the situation has become increasingly severe due to a sharp increase in the number of people infected with the Delta strain since around July this year. Now that we have reviewed the international situation surrounding COVID-19 and seen that there are considerable differences among countries, we must ask what factors determine the extent of the spread of infection. There are countless factors involved that depend on the particular situation of the countries involved, such as sanitary conditions, inequality and poverty, medical and social security systems, policy responses to COVID, people's behavioral patterns, and even biological factors. It is difficult to give a simple explanation, and it is a subject that should be analyzed and scrutinized from various angles in the future. But I'd like to mention a few points that I think are important from my point of view. The first is inequality and poverty and related social security systems. The next slide shows an international comparison of the so-called Gini coefficient, which indicate the degree of inequality, with the right side showing higher inequality and the left side showing lower inequality. When we look at this point and the situation surrounding COVID-19, as mentioned earlier, namely the fact that the US ranks first in the number of deaths from COVID-19 infections, the fact that the number of deaths from COVID-19 infections is high in the UK and Southern European countries, those countries in Europe with relatively large inequalities, and the number of deaths per population in Western countries, we can see a certain correlation with the size of the Gini coefficient, suggesting that inequality and poverty are somehow related to the situation surrounding COVID-19 infections. In societies where inequality and poverty are high, poor sanitation is inevitable, providing the perfect breeding ground for the outbreak of COVID-19 clusters. Moreover, in public spaces, people from all walks of life mingle, and infectious diseases spread throughout all corners of society. Therefore, if we want to control the occurrence of pandemics such as COVID-19 from a long-term perspective, one of the most effective measures is to reduce inequality and poverty as much as possible. Needless to say, the degree of inequality and poverty has a great deal to do with the country's social security and welfare systems. From this point of view, I think it is necessary to focus on the importance of social security and welfare in relation to COVID-19 and to make this a common awareness. As I just touched on the subject of social security systems, I would now like to mention a related topic in Japan. In the case of Japan, even though the number of people infected with COVID-19 is not that high compared to other countries, we soon experienced a shortage of hospital beds and a crisis in medical care. In Japan, public hospitals account for a low percentage of hospitals, and in terms of hospital beds, public hospital beds only account for about 30% of all hospital beds. Therefore, there are few hospitals that can cope with COVID-19, such as those equipped with ventilators and other vital medical equipment, and only about 30% of all hospitals accept patients with COVID-19. I consider this to be a major weakness of the Japanese healthcare system. In other words, we need to place more emphasis on the public nature of healthcare and strengthen support and regulations for public hospitals. In this sense, the state of the social security system is deeply related to the policy response to COVID-19 and its performance. Just now, I discussed the relationship between COVID-19 and inequality, poverty, and social security in light of the international situation regarding COVID-19. Now, I'd like to look at things from a slightly different point of view and introduce the simulations that our research group has been conducting in recent years. In our research using AI or artificial intelligence, we are attempting to find out what kinds of measures Japan needs to take to become sustainable in the future. Unfortunately, since the late 90s, the Japan of today has been experiencing growing inequality and poverty, increasing social isolation, something that I will talk about later, huge debts that are being passed on to the future generations, and a declining population, which is putting the country's sustainability at risk in many ways. So we started this research with the goal of using AI to conduct simulations and make recommendations in an attempt to answer the question, will Japan be sustainable in 2050? Fortunately, at Kyoto University, where I am based, an organization called the Hitachi Kyoto University Laboratory was established in 2016. There are experts in AI at this laboratory, so we have been conducting this research in collaboration with them. Specifically, we have focused on 4 areas of sustainability: 1, population; 2, finance and social security; 3, regions; and 4, environment and resources. Here we created a causal linkage model consisting of about 150 social factors that are considered important for the present and future of Japan's society, and used AI to simulate 20,000 different future scenarios for the year 2050. The results of this simulation were somewhat surprising to me, but in essence, the most important juncture for the sustainability of Japanese society in the future is whether its population will be centralized, as presented by the over-concentration of its population in Tokyo, or decentralized into regional communities. The simulation results show that the decentralized model is more desirable in terms of population, regional sustainability, inequality, health, and happiness. In addition, the results also show that there is a high possibility that this juncture is already on the horizon, that Japan will take one of these 2 irreversible paths somewhere between 2025 and 27. Due to time constraints, I will not go into details, but the slide you are looking at now is a diagram of the model created by the simulation. We published these simulations in 2017, but not long after the COVID-19 pandemic broke out. Infections spread first and foremost in metropolitan areas with high population concentrations numbering millions of people, such as New York, Paris, London, and Tokyo. I think it is quite clear that infectious diseases are more likely to spread in centralized areas with large concentrations of people. However, this idea of centralization and decentralization does not explain everything, of course. For example, in countries like some of those who are in attendance today, there are areas that are centralized just like Japan, and they have been able to control the spread of infections quite effectively. With this in mind, however, I believe that in the case of Japan, COVID-19 is an important opportunity to reveal the vulnerability of being a centralized society and to take steps to rectify the over-concentration of the population in Tokyo. From a different perspective, this notion of a decentralized society also overlaps with the importance of communities or localization. In other words, I refer to the kind of society in which local communities are firmly established and people are attached to and proud of their own region. At the same time, in such a society, the economy circulates well within the local community and a sense of mutual support permeates among the people, I believe that such a decentralized or localized direction will be one of the pivots for the future of welfare.
We published the above AI-based simulation in 2017, and following the outbreak of the COVID-19 pandemic last year, our research group conducted a new simulation on sustainability of Japanese society in the post-COVID-19 era. I do not have time to go into details today, so I will only introduce the results in brief here, but in a nutshell, they show that Japan in the post-COVID-19 era needs to undergo a shift to a decentralized society in an inclusive sense. Here, a decentralized society in an inclusive sense can be taken to mean something like the following. What I mean to say is that in this case, a decentralized society is not limited to a spatially decentralized society. For example, whether or not society is centralized in urban area or decentralized in regions by reflecting the overall concentration of the population in Tokyo, etc., such as the one shown in the AI simulation prior to the outbreak of COVID-19. Rather, the result of this latest simulation show that shift to an inclusive decentralized society that includes all aspects of work, housing, lifestyle, such as balancing work and family, and male participation in childcare is of the utmost importance of realization of sustainable society. I think this is also overlaps with the concept of diversity that is being discussed in various fields these days. In Japan, as the population and economy continue to expand in the period of rapid economic growth, people aimed for a single goal, as if they were claiming a single path in a group. And the model of men as office workers and women as housewives became entrenched. This was truly a society that followed single path, and therefore people did not pay much attention to diversity, but rather thought of it as a negative thing. In the case of Japan, the period of rapid economic growth and population increase was a time when I mentioned just now, we were climbing single path in a group, and there were only one goal. However, once you started at the top of the mountain, you have a 360-degree view of the world, and each individual can choose his or her own path and design his or her own life with a greater degree of freedom than before, demonstrating individual and creativity. This is decentralized society and inclusive sense that I am describing here. I think it overlaps the philosophy of welfare in the future. I discussed the direction of decentralized society, introducing the result of simulation of AI. Next, I would like to talk about the theme of welfare philosophy, which I believe will be important in the future. I think COVID-19 has brought to light in a new way the importance of solidarity among people, along with mutual support and connection that extend beyond families and groups. On the other hand, if we look at the reality, we can see that social isolation is increasing in developing countries. The next slide shows the international comparison of the situation surrounding social isolation in developed country. Unfortunately, as you can see, Japan is furthest to the right on the graph, meaning that it has highest level of social isolation among developed countries. In this concept, I believe that along with the various institutional measures related to welfare and social security, has become extremely important to build a welfare philosophy that forms the foundation for such measures. Let us think about this point a little more in terms of Japan. In the Edo period, before the modernization of Japan, a certain level of welfare philosophies based on traditional religions and philosophies such as Shintoism, Confucianism, Buddhism existed, and this philosophy permeated daily life to some extent. However, in the midst of rapid modernization, which took place from the Meiji period onward, a state-led modernization system was adopted. And in a sense, such welfare ideas seems to have become politicized or lost substance. Furthermore, in the late half of the 20th century, the economic growth and in the process, the tendency to judge everything in terms of profit and loss and personal profit grew stronger. I believe that could call this hollowing out of the welfare philosophy. I feel now is the time to think about the reconstruction of a concept of welfare philosophy. So what kind of concept would it entail? I'd like to introduce a book that gives us some clues so as to kind of shape this world. It is a book titled Ordinary Economics in Japan, Historical Perspective, written by Dr. Tetsuo Najita, a Japanese American from Hawaii, and distinguished professor of the history of ideas at the University of Chicago. The Japanese version of this book is titled Economy of Reciprocity. In this book, Dr. Najita points out that until the early modern period, Japan had a long tradition of an economy based on mutual aid, represented by a system of mutual assistance associations called ko. Under the ko system, people made regular monetary contribution to provide for eventualities such as illness or disaster, which was then used by those who were unfortunate enough to suffer from illness or disaster. According to Dr. Najita, there was also the network of such systems that extend beyond individual communities. He argues that such traditions were lost and altered during the state-led modernization of Japan after the Meiji period, but that the DNA still exists in Japanese society. Dr. Najita argues the voluntary activities of citizens in the aftermath of the earthquake is evidence that this DNA still exists in Japanese society. He further states that at the root of the idea of mutual aid, the idea of nature was of great importance, and that it was based on the idea that each thing and each person is infinite, and all receive blessing from the universal heaven or nature without destruction, without superiority of inferiority of others. As I am sure you have already noticed, what I have just described in relation to Japan, such as the concept of an economy or mutual support, an emphasis on nature is clearly connected to traditional Asian philosophy, worldview, and view of nature, and is a way of thinking that is still shared by people in Asia. In addition, I believe that this economy of mutual support and emphasis on nature are also connected to principles of SDG. Because what I have just described in relation to Dr. Najita works in reference to the pre-modern era, and it cannot be brought directly to modern era. However, I believe in something called reconstruct based on contemporary perspective. Due to time constraint, I will not go into detail, but I think it would take a shape of something along the line of what could be called global ethics. Broadly speaking, global ethics in a way of thinking that recognizes finite nature of global environment, understands the diversity of culture and religions derived from the diversity of climate Earth, and actively recognize the nature that underlies them. In other words, it expresses the philosophy of respective individual fully, while at the same time going beyond the individual to connect with community, life, and nature. In any case, I think it is very important for Asian countries with common traditional foundation to deepen exchange on the theme of reconstruction welfare philosophy in the wake of COVID-19 pandemic. Now, in connection with what I just talked about concerning welfare philosophy, I'd like to move to discuss the importance of concept of life. I believe that in the post-COVID-19 era, the concept life will become important as central concept in society. In this case, life means life in the broad sense, including everything from life at the individual level to macroscopic dimensions such as economics and biodiversity of the Earth. Looking at the history of science, since the so-called scientific revolution in the 17th century, the concept of science has largely shifted from matter to energy to information. It was around 1950 that American scientist Claude Shannon systematized the concept of the bit, the smallest unit of information, and created the principle of information theory. As such, information became a base concept of science. At first glance, it seems that the technology of information is expanding exponentially. But if we look at it in the context of a larger historical flow, it is able to enter a mature period of technological application and social diffusion. I believe that the next basic concept following on from information is clearly life. In this regard, there is an argument that life can be explained entirely by information or algorithm. A typical example is the theory of Raymond Kurzweil, an American futurist known for his so-called singularity theory. However, it can be said that COVID-19 pandemic has paradoxically shown that life cannot be completely explained by information. And please go to the next slide. Starting from the situation, in this way, the concept of life will become increasingly important, both in terms of the basic concept of science and in terms of expansion of related fields in the economy and society. Starting from the situation surrounding COVID-19 pandemic, I have discussed a wide range of topics. Please look at this slide. This is international comparison of Gini coefficient, which is an indicator of inequality on the vertical axis, and the environmental performance index, which is comprehensive index for the environmental developed by Yale University on the horizontal axis. Interestingly, the vertical and horizontal axes are correlated to some extent, with the upper left group presenting countries with high inequality and poor environmental performance, including the United States, and unfortunately Japan among developed countries. On the other hand, the lower right group is the country with low inequality and good environmental performance, which includes Germany, Switzerland, and Nordic countries. Here, I'd like to propose the idea of sustainable welfare society as a vision of the kind of society we should aim to build in the future. The key point here is to give comprehensive consideration to the issues concerning welfare and environment. Welfare relates to the fairness of wealth distribution and individual livelihood security, while environment relates to sustainability of resources and the global environment. Therefore, sustainable welfare societies mean a society in which individual livelihood, security, and fairness and distribution ensured while maintaining harmony with the environment and resource constraint over the long term. The importance of the environmental issue is also connected to what I mentioned in the beginning of my talk today. In addition, it is interesting to note that countries that perform well on welfare, equality, and inequality issues also perform well on the environment. Perhaps this is due to the awareness of mutual aid and solidarity among people that I mentioned earlier in this section of welfare philosophy. Otherwise, in a society where such awareness is deeply ingrained, a certain level of equality and quality of life can be achieved without having to ignore the environment and simply expand the scale of the economy. I believe in coming era, it will be utmost importance for Asian countries to build such sustainable welfare society at the local, national, and the regional levels through exchange and cooperation, as in today's conference. Fortunately, in Asia, we have a foundation of welfare philosophy, including mutual assistance, such as I mentioned earlier, and we are performing relatively well in the world responding to COVID-19. In addition, COVID-19, the countries participating here today are facing common challenges such as aging, declining birth rate, and declining population, and there is a strong need for mutual cooperation in this field of welfare.
네, 안녕하세요.
Hello everyone.
반갑습니다. 오늘 이렇게 시적으로 굉장히 중요한 주제를 갖고 이렇게 포럼을 할 수 있게 해준 일본 사회복지협의회 감사드리면서 또 이렇게 제가 한국 사례를 발표할 수 있게 돼서 무척 영광스럽게 생각을 합니다. 시간이 제한되어 있기 때문에 가능한 빨리 넘기면서 진행하도록 하겠습니다. 다음 페이지 next.
Okay, thank you for providing this opportunity. I think that today's occasion is held on a timely basis, and I'd like to extend my special thanks to the president of the National ICSW for hosting this event. Because of the limited time, I'm going to start my presentation now.
한국에서도 이 코로나19는 굉장히 심각한 상황이었고 우리 일상생활을 완전히 바꾸어 놓았었습니다. 그럼에도 불구하고 한국의 치명률이 외국에 비해서 낮은 것은 한국의 의료 시스템이 우수한 부분도 있었지만 요양시설에서 사회복지 인력들의 헌신적인 노력이 있었기 때문에 가능했다고 생각합니다.
South Korea has also experienced serious problems due to COVID-19. However, so our daily lives have been changed because of this COVID-19. However, the fertility ratio was relatively lower than other countries thanks to the well-advanced medical system as well as the devotion of social workers in nursery facilities.
슬라이드를 두 장 넘겨주시기 바랍니다.
Please skip the slides. Two slides, please. Next slide, please.
And next. 사회복지적 관점에서 이 코로나19가 보여준 현상은 중앙정부의 역할이 굉장히 강해진 것입니다. 재난지원금이라든가 보건의료 쪽에서 중앙정부가 전체 사회를 통제하는 그런 구조를 갖게 됐습니다.
Due to COVID-19, we have witnessed an increasing, the more significant role of central government, including the provision of subsidies and the centralized medical system.
그러나 이 중앙정부의 이런 강한 드라이브가 지속되기에는 재정적으로나 또 국민들의 저항들이 있어서 쉽지 않은 그런 상황입니다.
However, when we drive this kind of central government-oriented campaign, we face some problems like financial issues or some resistance from the people.
Next slide. 그렇기 때문에 우리가 민간 중심으로 복지 공동체를 구축해서 이런 지속 가능한 복지 사회를 구축하는 것이 굉장히 중요하다고 한국에서도 인식하고 있습니다.
So we recognize that private sector should play the central role to build a sustainable social welfare community.
Next slide. 이 코로나 전에는 한국에서도 이 복지 공동체가 중요하다고 생각을 해서 지역 사회에서 마을 만들기 사업이라든가 로컬 거버넌스 중심의 그런 공동체 만들기가 굉장히 유행됐었습니다.
Okay, even before COVID-19, we recognized the importance of welfare community. So we had some campaigns, including some the building the villages or the local governance.
그러나 이 코로나19로 인해서 이러한 모든 것들이 많이 사라지고 중앙정부가 중심이 된 그런 정책들만 보이게 됐습니다.
However, all these local efforts have disappeared due to COVID-19, and we have only the major campaigns driven by the central government.
그럼에도 불구하고 민간 부분에서 다양한 역할을 했습니다. Next slide.
However, private sector has played a range of roles.
그리고 앞으로 이런 지속 가능한 사회를 만들기 위해서는 이러한 민간의 역할이 더욱 강화돼야 된다고 생각을 합니다.
And to build a more sustainable society, I think that the role of private sector should be more emphasized.
Next slide. 주로 이 재난지원금이라든가 보건의료에서는 중앙정부 중심으로 갔지만 지역사회에서 취약계층들에게 서비스를 제공하는 것은 역시 민간과 함께할 수밖에 없었습니다.
Of course, as I mentioned earlier, the provision of subsidies over the medical systems, these things have been led by the central government. However, if we want to provide our support for the economically vulnerable, we should work with the private sector.
중앙정부에서는 공공과 민간의 협력 체계를 구축해서 지역사회에서 취약계층들을 돌봄하기 위한 그런 체계를 만들어서 가능하면 하위 지방 지자체 쪽으로 해서 지원을 하기 시작했습니다.
So the central government has started its support for the lower level local government. I mean, to better support the economically vulnerable. Okay, the central government is now going to form a public-private partnership.
Next slide. 예를 들면 이 서울 옆에 있는 한 조그만 시에서는 정부가 지역사회 사회복지 시설과 함께 독거 어르신들 그분들이 코로나19로 인해서 이제 밖에 나오지 못하고 있기 때문에 독거 어르신들을 찾아가서 그들의 세탁을 해주는 그런 이 사업을 전개하기도 했습니다.
A city near Seoul, which is a very small city, the city has started its campaign to work with the local nursery facilities. So they are providing some free nursery service for the elderly who are living alone.
이것이 시에서 계획을 했지만 실제로 참여한 것은 민간 사회복지 시설들이었고 또 이 지역의 그 세탁소들이 함께함으로써 이 민간이 함께하고 지역의 세탁소들에게도 경제적으로 도움을 준 그런 사례라고 볼 수 있습니다.
Okay, of course, the campaign was planned by the city. However, the private party actually joined at the project, and the local luxury shops joined. That led to more kind of a vibrant economy. Vibrant local economy.
Next slide. 그런데 한국에서 역시 이제 민간 부분에서 이 사회복지를 총괄하면서 여러 가지 많은 활동을 지원하는 것은 사회복지 협의회입니다.
So, however, here in Korea, anyway, to provide better support for this private sector, the role of the Korea National CSW is important because that is the role of the Korea National CSW.
기업들이 사회공헌 활동을 통해서 이런 복지 공동체를 만들기 위해서 사회복지 협의회에서는 지역 사회공헌 인정제를 만들어서 기업들이 사회공헌 활동에 적극적으로 참여하는 것을 동기화하기도 했습니다.
So in this regard, KNCSW made social welfare contribution recognition system, so that the system can be better utilized. I mean, can be to promote or motivate enterprises, the private companies to join their efforts in this regard.
전국에 좋은 이웃들이라는 조직을 만들어서 사각지대에 있는 이 사람들을 지원하는 봉사활동도 전개했습니다.
And we formed a group titled Good Neighbors. And with this group, we provide support to those unknown.
사회공헌 활동 기부은행이라는 조직을 통해서 65세 이상 어르신들의 돌봄을 지원하는 사업도 전개했습니다.
We also made a kind of social contribution bank to provide better support for the elderly over 65.
특별히 사회복지 포털을 통해서 이런 코로나19로 인해서 어려움을 당하는 그런 세대들에게 다양한 긴급 돌봄 지원 사업도 전개를 할 수 있었습니다.
And through the social welfare portal, we provide the emergency care service for those in need.
Next slide. 또 하나 이제 민간 부분에서 중요한 것이 그 사회복지 공동모금인데요. 한국 사람들은 위기에 이렇게 기부를 잘하는 특성이 있습니다. 그래서 이번 코로나19에도 예상치보다 훨씬 많은 금액이 기부가 됐고 그 금액을 주로 코로나19로 인해서 어려움을 당하는 노년층이라든가 이 소외계층들을 지원하는 데 집중적으로 사용할 수 있었습니다.
And another item that successful item was the social welfare funds. Many Korean people they tend to provide. They tend to contribute their money if we are experiencing under difficulties. So that many people contribute their money for this regard to funds and the funds used to help the elderly and the isolated people.
Next. 특히 이제 한국의 기업도 이런 코로나19를 맞이해서 이 지속 가능한 성장의 필요성을 느끼고 ESG 경영을 강화하는 그런 모습을 보였습니다.
And many Korean companies they agree this and recently they are enhancing their ESG efforts.
Next. 이런 여러 가지 지원 활동들이 늘어난 반면에 그 자원봉사 활동은 전반적으로 줄었습니다. 대면 자원봉사 활동이 줄었는데 그럼에도 불구하고 언택트 자원봉사 활동들이 늘어나는 모습을 보였습니다.
Even if we have increased this kind of support, the portion of voluntary action, in-person voluntary action has decreased due to COVID-19. However, the contactless voluntary action, voluntary movement has increased.
Next. 그럼에도 불구하고 한국의 이런 복지 공동체를 위한 몇 가지 과제가 있습니다. 첫 번째로는 많은 사람들이 좀 참여하게 하는 복지 공동체 구축이 굉장히 중요하다는 것을 느끼고 있습니다.
However, even if we have put in this kind of efforts, we still have challenges to building the social welfare community. First one is that we should induce more people to join this effort.
Next. 특별히 중앙정부 중심의 복지보다는 민간이 참여하는 그 복지 사회라는 모델을 만드는 것이 중요한데 특히 한국에서는 종교계와 기업의 참여가 상당히 중요할 것으로 여겨집니다.
So rather than the central government-led drive, we should build a model, which is led by the private sector, the welfare model, system model, led by the private sector. In particular, the involvement of the religious party and the religious circle or the companies are important.
특히 이제 우리 한국인들이 종교를 갖고 있는 인구가 거의 80% 정도 되기 때문에 이 종교계가 이런 복지 공동체 구축에 참여하는 것은 굉장히 중요한 이슈가 되고 있습니다.
Because here in Korea, 80% of the Korean people have religion. So the involvement of the religious circle in this regard is critical.
코로나19 전에는 한국도 이 커뮤니티 케어 시스템을 만들기 위해서 많은 기획을 했습니다.
Before COVID-19, we had a plan to build a community care center.
Next. 우리 한국뿐만 아니라 특히 우리 극동의 아시아 국가들은 이미 이 커뮤니티라는 공동체라는 가치들을 많이 갖고 있었고 가족의 가치 그다음에 어르신을 존경하는 그런 가치를 많이 갖고 있었는데 이것을 이제 코로나19에 이러한 가치를 살리는 작업들이 중요하다고 생각을 합니다.
Including Korea in East Asian countries, in many Asian countries, there we valued the family and community, and we had the culture of respecting the elderly. I think now it's time to recover such kind of value.
이러한 과정을 통해서 이제는 중앙정부 중심이 아니라 지자체 그리고 지역의 다양한 민간 조직들의 역할이 더욱 중요해지는 시기라고 생각합니다.
That's why, as I said, the role rather than the central government, the role of local governments and the private group in each local private group are increasingly important.
Next. 특히 사회 문제가 점점 복잡해지고 있기 때문에 어느 한 주체가 사회 문제를 해결하는 것이 아니라 이 컬렉티브 임팩트를 위해서 기업과 비영리 재단과 정부가 협력적인 관계를 유지하는 게 중요합니다.
And then because our social culture or the social structure is getting more complicated, so rather than a single party, we need a collective wisdom, collective effect. So the non-profit organizations work with the corporations in this regard.
Next. 한국에서는 이 커뮤니티 케어를 하는 데 있어서 공간적인 의미도 중요하지만 관계에 기반한 커뮤니티 케어가 중요하다고 생각합니다. 왜냐하면 우리 극동아시아 국가들이 많이 그렇지만 인구가 좁은 공간에 밀집되어 있습니다. 그래서 그 밀집된 공간에 굉장히 다양한 사람들이 살고 있기 때문에 이런 관계 속에서 커뮤니티 케어를 하기 위한 그런 노력들이 필요하다고 생각합니다.
When it comes to community care, of course, the status of community care is important. However, we should value more the relations among people. This is because here in Korea, of course, the population is quite high, and in this small land, a wide range of people live together. That is why we should put more effort to focus on the relations among people to provide a better community care.
Next. 그런 맥락에서 이 많은 사람들이 사회적 가치를 창출하는 노력이 필요합니다. 그래서 우리가 일반적으로 연대의식이나 책임의식이나 이런 공정성이나 신뢰감을 구축하는 그러한 가치를 많은 사람들이 내재화할 수 있도록 노력해야 합니다.
So in this regard, we should put more effort to create social value. For instance, those a stronger solidarity or raise a sense of responsibility, a sense of fairness and trust.
최근 한국에서는 코로나19로 인해서 이 경제적 불평등이 굉장히 심화되고 있는데 그러다 보니까 많은 사람들이 시장 경제적 가치에 몰입이 되어 있습니다. 그래서 이제 우리 사회복지계에서는 많은 사람들이 사회적 가치를 좀 가질 수 있도록 그런 시민운동을 벌이는 것도 중요하다고 생각합니다.
Because experiencing the COVID-19, we have witnessed a more serious economic inequality, and many are just focusing on the market value. However, we should focus on social value, as I mentioned. So that is why the involvement of civil society is important.
Next. 그래서 이제 한국에서는 이제 사회적 가치의 어떤 내용들을 이와 같이 정하고 있습니다.
These are the main contents of social value here in Korea.
Next. 마지막으로 한국도 이제는 이 SDG의 사회복지계도 SDG에 참여하는 것이 굉장히 중요하다고 생각을 합니다. 앞서서 히로이 교수님께서도 말씀하셨지만 우리가 지속 가능 사회를 만들기 위해서 이 복지계도 이 유엔의 SDG의 17가지 골에 참여하면서 이런 환경 문제라든가 이런 복지 사회 문제가 함께 좀 해결될 수 있는 그런 사회 구축에 참여하는 것이 중요하다고 생각을 합니다.
And as I mentioned by Professor Hiroi, I think the participation in the effort to achieve the 17 SDGs is important. By joining the effort of SDGs, we can achieve our goals in the sectors of environment, welfare, and society.
Next. 마지막으로 이 한국에서는 이렇게 지방 정부와 또 사회복지 시설들과 한쪽에서는 사회복지협의회가 서로 협력을 해서 이런 복지 공동체를 만들기 구축하기 위한 그런 모델을 계속 이어나가야 된다고 생각합니다.
And in another part, the local government and the welfare facility and the ICSW, the three parties should work together on and on to build a decent welfare community.
Next. 경청해 주셔서 감사합니다. 제가 아침마다 이렇게
Good morning, everyone. It's my pleasure to share Taiwan's pandemic experience with you. Today, I will shed some light on the effects of the COVID-19 pandemic on Taiwan's social welfare system and the countermeasures taken. I will start my talk with a brief introduction, then examine the effects of the pandemic on Taiwan's social welfare system and the countermeasures adopted by Taiwan, and finally, our future policy actions. Introduction. After the COVID-19 pandemic broke out in 2019, Taiwan immediately established the Central Epidemic Command Center on January 20, 2020. In February, a call center was set up to provide check-in calls, support, and counseling services to those in quarantine. Strategies and complementary measures for community pandemic prevention were also implemented. In May 2021, Taiwan faced a surge in local infections. Many businesses were temporarily closed and people's lives are affected. In response, the government developed countermeasures to help the people face these challenges. Effects of the pandemic on Taiwan's social welfare system. During the pandemic, care service centers were temporarily closed to prevent community transmission. In addition, the border control protocol implemented prevented foreign care providers from entering Taiwan and mandated home quarantine or isolation for some of these care providers, creating a delay in providing care, which further increased the care burden on families. Because people work from home and spend more time at home, they encountered high levels of stress and several conflicts related to care, and could not easily seek outside help. These factors increase the risk of domestic violence. People's livelihoods, particularly economically disadvantaged individuals and families, have been greatly affected. Social welfare groups have also struggled because donations have decreased. In addition, social service providers would come in contact with a large number of people when providing services, thereby increasing their risks of infection. Countermeasures to the pandemic. To maintain basic services, the government has prescribed the daily check-in calls be made to care service recipients and to older adults living alone to understand their health care needs. Assistance is provided to those requiring long-term care services to facilitate a smooth transition to long-term care services. Additionally, resources from the private sector have been used to support emergency measures and to ensure that due care is provided. To prevent domestic violence, we have improved the channels for victims to seek help and report domestic violence by providing phone, online, and text message. We have also collaborated with shops to offer reporting service and have check-in with students absent from online classes and those from disadvantaged families. In addition, we have collaborated with hotel and other accommodation providers to increase shelter space, helping victims appear in court remotely for safety, and encouraging the development of online and alternative service provision methods. Economic security for the household is crucial. Therefore, we have ordered daily compensation of 10,000 NT dollars for up to 14 days to those unable to work because they were in isolation or quarantine. Parents and guardians of children aged under 12 years old were offered a one-off subsidy of 10,000 NT dollars per child. For the disadvantaged, older adults, children, youth, and people with disabilities who already receive subsidies and additional money living subsidies of 15,000 NT dollars for offered for up 3 months. In addition, the coverage of the emergency relief program was expanded to provide those entitled with an emergency relief subsidy to secure their livelihoods. To assist NGO, the government has established eligibility criteria for relief subsidies. Expense covered by the subsidies include basic maintenance, overtime payment, and low interest. Preventing service providers from evasion, a wide range of methods, including in-person visits, telephone calls, and video calls, have been used to understand people's needs. If an in-person visit is necessary, the service provider must fully comply with all protective measures and minimize the duration of the visit. We have also endeavored to prioritize the vaccination of social welfare professionals to ensure their safety. Future policy actions. The global impact of the COVID-19 pandemic has threatened people's lives and safety. The pandemic also affected the economic and social welfare systems. We will continue to follow the Command Center's pandemic prevention and control policies as well as instructions, and improve the social welfare service provision model during the pandemic. We will also consider the rights of service users and the risks that service providers face, maintain the capacity of social welfare services, ensure social welfare group and institution continue to operate to ensure the safety of all. Finally, I'm thankful for this opportunity to share with you the experience of Taiwan and to learn about the experience of other countries. This exchange will help us grow together in our efforts to contain the pandemic. Again, thank you all for your attendance today.
Mr. Wong, the floor is yours.
Thank you, moderator. Thank you very much for giving me the time to share with you some of the emerging insights from Hong Kong arising from the new challenges. Arising from COVID-19 pandemic. I think there are new challenges as well as old challenges that we have been talking about in the ICSW family. And also we observe that there are some new opportunities that we may share with you. Next slide, please. Next, please. Next, please. This is just a brief. Okay. As of today, the COVID-19 situation in Hong Kong is like this. We have about 12,000 infected cases, more than 12,000 infected cases already, and more than 200 fatal cases. Which is quite unfortunate. But as the keynote speaker has already introduced, these numbers are relatively low compared to other countries and other regions of the world. I think in Hong Kong, the government has been a major policy directive is that we spare no effort in achieving zero infections, which is maybe a bit different from other parts of the world. And of course, we would like to prevent. The government would like to prevent more importation cases and spreading of virus in the community. So the basic strategy will be like early identification, early isolation and quarantine. And as much as we can do, we hope that we should deal with those who are being infected and minimize the fatal case. Next, please. Because the pandemic in Hong Kong, the beginning was in 2020, early part of 2020, and at that time, our council has been busy with soliciting different kind of supports, particularly on basic things like face masks, all the sanitizing material. So at that time, we through our network agency members and the service centers, we solicited different materials and distributed all these materials to those people, particularly those who do not have good access to these materials. And through this distribution exercise, we also take that opportunity to conduct a survey, and we have identified four major challenges or major problems being faced by vulnerable groups in Hong Kong. Of course, as in other parts of the world, unemployment and underemployment are major threats to the community because that affects the income of a lot of households. And the second point, of course, because of the lockdown, everybody were locked actually to the household. So the parents, children are staying together for a much longer time. And children will have to study at home. And the parents find it very difficult to guide the children in terms of learning. And there are a lot of users and patients who've been using the medical services, public services. But because of the lockdown and closing of service or limitation of the operation of these centers, they do not have good access to regular medical services and also different kind of rehabilitation training and similar things like that. The fourth problem, of course, is because of the social distancing, strategy. Okay, so social support and psychological support. Do I have to do anything? Build the original sound? No. Social and mental health. So they could not share because of the pandemic. They could not share the worries and other, problems they experience with friends and people. So these are the four major problems that we identify. Next, please. Not just by the government, but also by most of the people, stakeholders in the civil society sector to mitigate the threats of the COVID-19 in terms of health and medical. The major strategies, as I said, is zero infection, and also identification and quarantine. And in terms of prevention, as much as we can do to maintain social distance. Later part of 2020, when the vaccine is more available, we try to promote more vaccination in the community. But in terms of social strategies, the first thing is to secure employment, by which I mean secure income for most of the households in Hong Kong. For those who are vulnerable using public services, we try to prioritize and strategize formal service operation in the context of social distancing. And also we have to continue to maintain the operation of the civil society organization. So we try to encourage and coordinate civil society efforts to address the social needs of the people. Next, please. In terms of specific measures, of course, we did a lot of different things. But I just want to highlight a few areas in the field measures. In terms of health, we solicited face masks and all that. As I said, by later of the 2020, the government has started to implement a free COVID-19 vaccination program. At the moment, I think about 70% of our population are being vaccinated by two jabs. And also they've been talking about starting the third one. In terms of welfare service, we're working closely with the government to institute some special arrangement to maintain minimal service to those people who are in need in terms of childcare center, daycare center, shelter workshop, all this. To the extent we are possible. In terms of education, I think most of the people in different part of the world have to adopt a homeschooling mode. And because of that, there are a lot of households who are, at a very grassroots level. They may not have the resources and, facilities and devices to support this kind of schooling mode. So we try to solicit all these facilities and devices to make sure that they could, still enjoy learning at home. Employment. The government has set up an anti-epidemic fund to assist the affected industries. So that because in Hong Kong, most of the jobs are actually created by the small and medium-sized enterprise. So they have to make sure that this enterprise can still remain in operation so that the job of the employees can be protected and be secured. So the major strategy is to give this funding to this industry so that they can maintain jobs for the people who need. And also for those who are unemployed and unemployed, make sure that they have some bit of cash assistance. Although we've been trying to advocate something like a special cash assistance program, insurance and also employment insurance, but these suggestions have not yet been adopted by the government. 2 minutes left. Okay. Maybe next. We have. Let me skip this because I think just to tell you that the impact of COVID-19 on unemployment is very big. But a lot of people actually do not enjoy much social security assistance. Like only 5% are receiving the social security cash allowance because the scheme has been designed in a way that discourage a lot of people who are at the income level or high income level suddenly become unemployed. They have a lot of assets at hand, so they are not eligible to apply for that. So people who are unemployed are 34%, but only 5% are receiving social security coverage. Next, please. In terms of policy recommendation, I think protect income and also lower the burden of household expenditure. But we think that more importantly is how to leverage the support and the resources of civil society. We have actually identified a new opportunity. In fact, because of the social distancing, I think we've we have been champion leverage more technology and make use of the technology advancement, then try to bridge the gap in terms of providing public services, in terms of bridging the social connection between people, so as to make sure there's a community that's available to support people who are in a vulnerable position. We also hope that we should, as I said, we have to maintain the capacity of the civil society. But a lot of NGO, particularly those do not receive any subvention from the government. Their income actually has been, substantially reduced because usually they rely on public donation, they rely on, corporate events, but because of the social distancing, all these are, cannot be, implemented. So they do not, they lost their funding support. So we are, trying to advocate more on this. Next, please, the last slide. I don't want to talk about our initiative. I think organizations all over the world are doing the same thing. Next, please, the last line. To look ahead, I think the new opportunity will be how we should, I think it's going to be, you have to rely on all decentralized strategies to reach and to meet the needs of the people at the community level. But at the same time, you have to have that kind of, technological or administrative capacity to be able to deliver the service, particularly in times when you are having this kind of difficult situation that you cannot have direct access to people. So I think moving ahead, we should think about how we should use more technology to deal with the situation. But as I said, there are still, the outbreak of the pandemic has illustrated some of the new old challenges that we've been facing all the time. Like in terms of how we should make sure that people are not being excluded because of their identity, because of their gender, because of whatever kind of thing. So we have to make sure that we have a system in place that is promoting equality, promoting social integration, and a caring community. I think I will have to stop here because I think time is running out. Thank you very much for your attention. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Mr. Won. Mr. Won talked about the impact of COVID-19 on socially vulnerable people, the employment, health, and mentally health as well, and insurance, education, employment, and civil society's activities. Thank you very much for your report.
Next, let's hear from a presentation from Mongol. It'll be Dr. Bachulin Suroshi. Excuse me, Bachulin Suhochil. Dr. Bachulin Sulovchin.
Hello everyone, I am glad to participate in this conference to discuss the needs of the social work development policy in Mongolia. 25 years have passed since the development of social work in Mongolia. Therefore, in order to evaluate the achievements and shortcomings in the development of social work to determine the concept of development for the next 25 years, we are planning to conduct case studies and advocacy work to ensure the participation of social workers. Mongolia was selected in 1887 to develop social work for development, and is reflected in the documents. Until 2003, it developed the declared policy and legal environment. However, from 2003 to 2030, the development policy of social work was stated in Social Security Sector Strategy paper and successfully implemented as follows. Number 1, developing core social work strategy and methodology. Number 2, developing the professional curriculum and teaching and learning materials. Number 3, accrediting social work curriculum. Number 4, strengthening the capacity in social work of state administrative central organization. Number 5, training personnel of local provinces. During the implementation of the policy, many changes have taken place in the legal environment, programs, and public attitudes. In 2005, The law on social welfare first reflected the legal status of social workers. In 2009, the standard normative of social worker was approved, making it possible for universities that train social workers to teach according to a single standard. In 2010, the social workers' job description and social work standards were adopted and implemented, creating conditions for social workers to perform certain duties in a secure workplace. There are currently more than 3,300 social workers in government. There are 870 social workers in the administrative unit, 1,250 in the welfare sector, and 730 in the secondary school. It is estimated that there are about 1,000 social workers in NGOs and the private sector. These social workers have the following responsibilities set out in the 2009 Model Order of the Social Worker by a joint order of the Minister of Labor and Social Welfare and the Minister of Education, Culture and Science. Provide social services to individuals, children, families and groups, manage community programs, implement related laws and regulations, conduct other activities stated in the regulation. The workload of social workers is high. This is due to the fact that there is only one social worker in Horo with a population of over 8,000. The standards norms for Mongolian social workers are as follows. Needs to reach international standards. According to the standards in developed countries, social workers per 1,000 population. Sweden 37, Finland 12, England 6, and Mongolia 03 to 05. One social worker per 600 population in most of countries. 4,421 social workers are required in the future. Article 28.1 of the Law on Social Welfare states that the professional social worker shall work. However, this provision does not apply, and there are many non-professionals working in the social workers' workplace. According to a 2019 survey, 68.2% are non-professionals. Current situation for social work and social workers. Workload 3,000 to 8,000 persons per social worker. Social workers in Mongolia are lacking of sufficient time and a good working environment to identify those who needed help and make a plan and implement it for them. Salary per month 87.4% of total social workers, 500,000 to 600,000 Turk, and 1.6% of social workers, 600,000 to 700,000 Mongol Turk. It's around $210 to $245 per month. Job satisfaction 84.7%. Salary satisfaction 17.4%. Since 2030, development policy of social work could not be clearly articulated. First school social workers began working in the secondary school on December 29, 1999. Currently, there are a total 3,300 social workers, out of which 28% bachelor's degree and 1.5% master's degree in social work. 17 universities and institutions now offer education in professional social work with more than 5,000 graduates. 6 non-governmental organizations are carrying out social work and service. The results of 2 national surveys among the social workers between 2020 and 2021. There is an increasing need for providing a development policy on social work. concerning legislation and policies will be enhanced cooperation. There is also a need to make a new law to ensure social protection and working relationship among the social workers in different sectors. It shows another need for providing a step-by-step training with the possibility of earning credit based on social workers' needs. Social workers' needs for permanent activity participation is higher. Based on survey, nationally discussions were held quarterly to create an environment platform for social workers to participate. The three forums were held in topics such as social protection and professional code for social workers, social work education and career, and social work services and professional management. The forums aimed to encourage social worker participation in every sector and improve service quality. The social work has been recognized in Mongolia for 25 years with an achievement of employing the social worker in every sector. However, clarity and coordination in working relationship as well as cooperation remain poor. The virtual forums embrace three main features. First, self-initiated activity by the social workers. Secondly, continuous discussion. Thirdly, an online site where social workers from all sectors can gather. Suggestions given by the participants from different sectors in the city and local provinces. Out of all 1,126 social workers, 358 expressed their opinions. Improve the legal environment and policies which can make development of social work in Mongolia reach next stage of, for example, making a law which will be applied to social workers. Encourage social workers' participation in connection with the reforms introduced by the state. Reduce workload of social workers. Improve social workers' professional development. Ensure effective working relationships. Forum report in brief. Social workers in diverse sectors are experiencing similar problems, including poor working conditions, lack of ADD meeting room, low salary, and too much workload. Social work services vary in each sector, and in that regard, the sectors are governed by their own regulations and policies. Accordingly, social workers' job description is different. There is a great shortage of professional development opportunities and participation. Continuous development is a serious concern. Social workers' lack of working experience, which is required during the COVID-19 pandemic, and are limited to receive support from others. It has been common practice among the social workers to participate in any activities organized by organizations or management rather than on their own initiative. Conclusions. The clarity of social work development policy have been vague for the past 8 years. The social work service is governed by various laws. The overall working relationship and cooperation is weak. The social workers cannot fully provide professional service. Social workers are underpaid and overworked. Serious issues the social workers encountering are their salary range and incentives and social security owing to the weak policy. There is no mechanisms to monitor and improve the service quality. Stability in the workplace and professional development opportunity is poor. Further measures. To develop a policy to encourage social work development, to make and approve a law on social worker and regarding the new law, a varied group of social workers are able to work in the same legislation and get social security benefits. To improve cooperation and working relationship of social workers in different sectors. To increase a position of social worker according to the standard normatives. To hire more employees in social work, make their jobs stable and retrain them. To hire professional managers. To to the Code of Ethics for Social Workers. Thanks for your attention. Good luck with the conference.
I am Nakashima from Bunkyo Gakuin University. I'm going to talk about trends in Japan's social welfare policy. Social welfare issues in modern Japan exist in diverse forms in local communities such as social isolation and loneliness. Slide 2 shows an image from the study group on the ideal form of social welfare for people in need of social assistance report published by the Ministry of Health, Labor and Welfare in 2000, with further additions made by the same ministry on contemporary issues. The report added such issues as social withdrawal, internet cafe refugees, bullying, hoarding, people in need of housing security, developmental disorders, LGBT, and victims of crime. In order to cope with the rapid aging of the population, Japan's community welfare has focused on the elderly sector as shown by the implementation of the long-term care insurance system in 2000 and the Welfare Ministry's publication of Elderly Care Towards 2015 in 2003, which aims to build a comprehensive community care system. Here, the aim is to establish a comprehensive regional care system in which medical care, nursing care, preventative care, housing, and daily life support are provided in an integrated manner by 2025, based on municipalities, the unit of government most familiar to community residents. Japan's long-term care insurance system has established a framework to provide stable and continuous services with basic municipalities being the insurer. Over a period of 19 years, up until 2019, the number of insured persons at 65 or older has increased 1.6 times, persons certified as requiring long-term care has increased 3 times, and in-house service users has increased 3.9 times. In today's Japan, the need for daily life support and preventative care has become apparent, and an important initiative in terms of community welfare practice called the Daily Life Support System Project is undertaken to promote social participation among the elderly by assigning daily life support coordinators. On the other hand, the global economic crisis that began with the bankruptcy of the U.S. securities firm Lehman Brothers in 2008 brought to light the problem of poverty among the working-age population in Japan, including many non-regular workers. At the time, Japan did not have a well-developed safety net prior to the welfare system and had to rely on the pioneering efforts of NPOs and social welfare councils, including homeless support groups. The national government also promoted the Personal Support Service Project as a model project, and with the emergence of pioneering initiatives to this end, taken by Toyonaka City Council of Social Welfare and others, the need for a one-stop service in collaboration with conventional projects such as support for community welfare, loans for welfare funds, and support systems for job seekers became apparent. At the time of the Lehman shock, the situation in Japan was severe with more than 30,000 suicides and an unemployment rate of 5.1% and 3.36 million unemployed, revealing the existence of a large number of people in need. This economic recession also highlighted the problems with Japan's social security system, which was supposed to have had a multi-layered safety net in place since it first introduced national health insurance and pensions in 1961. However, as shown in slide 8, it became clear that the level of support between the first and third net, which is the public assistance system, was inadequate. For this reason, the Act on Self-Reliance Support for Needy Persons was established in 2013, and a partial revision of the Public Assistance Act was passed. The legislative establishment of this self-reliance support system for the needy includes what can be called the institutionalization of community welfare, which incorporates community welfare perspectives to a great extent. The general consultations provided by self-reliance support organizations and the perspective of community building that prevents the needy from becoming isolated are based on a new philosophy of support for the needy that also emphasizes the development of social resources, 1 comprehensive support, 2 individualized support, 3 early support, and 4. Continuous support, and 5. Decentralized and creative support. The Act on Self-Reliance Support for Needy Persons also covers those who have not yet received public assistance, the homeless, those who have attempted suicide, those who are in a state of social withdrawal, children supported by school social workers, and those who are in arrears with utility bills and other lifelines. The practice also emphasizes outreach support for those who have difficulty in seeking help or connecting to organizations providing consultations, as in the case of social withdrawal support. In recent years, with the COVID-19 pandemic, consultation centers under the Self-Reliance Support System for the Needy have functioned effectively. The number of consultations has increased more than 100 times in some. Various people, including those with non-Japanese roots who had not typically received consultations, are now coming to the center for consultations, and support is provided to such people for longer duration. The Self-Reliance Support System for the Needy is a project where cooperation and collaboration with existing systems are essential in resolving issues, and the perspectives of community welfare networks and multi-organizational cooperation function effectively and play an important role in supporting community building. Against the backdrop of the establishment of the above-mentioned comprehensive community care system and the self-reliance support system for the needy, efforts in Japan's community welfare have been underway to develop a comprehensive support system in municipalities under the slogan of a community-based inclusive society, with the aim of providing public support that transcends systems and fields, as stipulated in Article 106-3 of the 2017 Revised Social Welfare Act. At the same time, community building or creation of a system for residents to proactively support each other is being addressed. This effort to establish a comprehensive support system was made mandatory in response to the increasingly complexity of issues such as the 80-50 problem, in which elderly parents and unemployed single children in their 50s live together, and households that have to juggle nursing care and child care at the same time, or double care. It also addresses cases of self-neglect and other problems such as so-called garbage houses and cases where people are suspected of having a disability but refuse to apply for a certificate. Such problems are often buried in the community and invisible. For this reason, community welfare must be practiced by collaboration with various actors including local residents, welfare commissioners, and social welfare corporations to discover problems with community social workers and welfare coordinators, connecting them to related organizations to help solve them. In order to achieve this, local residents need to share community life issues, focusing on supporting whole households to cope with compounding issues, and support for dealing with isolation and encouraging participation. Welfare education practices are indispensable. In order to actively create opportunities for various actors in community welfare to learn about the social welfare issues in the community, the Japan National Council of Social Welfare is currently in the process of training welfare education promoters nationwide. The town of Kotohira in Kagawa Prefecture, with a population of about 9,000 people, has been entrusted with a model project by the Welfare Ministry to strengthen multi-organizational cooperation and community capabilities. Local residents are learning and doing activities through self-help and mutual aid, and public and private collaboration through mutual aid and public assistance is also promoted. Amid the increasingly complex issue and the emergence of needs for addressing problems in between systems, multi-layered support systems project was established under the Revised Social Welfare Act of 2020 to provide comprehensive consultations and support in municipalities. Under this project, consultation support, participation support, and support for community building are being addressed. Grants will be provided so that the financial resources can be administered in an integrated manner. These efforts have become a reality as community welfare policies. In order to actualize these community welfare policies, it is necessary to enhance the ability of local residents to independently solve their community issues, along with the creation of the kind of comprehensive support system that I have discussed today. I believe that the comprehensive support system and the resident-based community problem-solving system must be built as two wheels in the public support system if we are to achieve the goal set out in the project to develop multi-layered support systems. In order to do so, it is necessary to have specialists who can put into practice social work of a kind that connects, involves, and collaborates with many people. By having social workers play an important role in these community welfare policies, I believe that we can create a community-based inclusive society. This ends my presentation. Thank you. Thank you very much. We just concluded 5 presentations and we now move on. We originally scheduled Q&A and discussion, but unfortunately, since the time's limited, we will skip the Q&A. The questions that we received will be answered in writing. We will be distributing the questions and answers to the participants on a later date.
So that concludes the policy report. Thank you. And thank you all the presenters and also Professor Nakashima for the facilitation. Thank you. And please join me in celebrating their wonderful presentations. Because of the time limitation, we had to skip the Q&A session. But please send us your questions on chat. We'll make sure we'll get the feedback and put the answers back to you. So we would like to take 5 minutes break. So initially 10 minutes, but we need to take a shorter break by 5 minutes. Case report will start in about 5 minutes. It's 12:28 Japan time. So in 5 minutes, 12:28 Japan time, or in 5 minutes, we'll see you again.
Next, please. 오늘 발표할 내용은 한국에서 2020년 1월 20일 코로나 감염 확진자가 발생한 이후 노인복지 현장에서 팬데믹 상황 속에서도 노인에게 안전한 서비스 구축이 절실히 필요했고 겪어보지 못한 상황 속에서 우리들의 문제의식을 가지고 어떻게 대응해 나가고 있는지에 대해서 말씀드리겠습니다. 우선 보시는 바와 같이 목차대로 통합 돌봄에 대한 배경, 또 사회 서비스원 설립, 장기 요양 시설에 대한 코드 격리, 노인 종합복지관에 대한 대응, 치매 안심센터에 대해서 발표하겠습니다. Okay, today I'm going to focus on the cases here in Korea, how we provide the support required for the elderly under the COVID-19 situation. So, and the main contents of my presentation are on the slide. We are welfare policy of COVID-19 response, long-term care facilities, senior welfare center, and dementia center.
Next, please. 추진 배경으로는 통합돌봄이 베이비부머 1955년에서 63년 출생자인데 노년기 진입이 본격화되는 2025년 노인 인구 1000만의 초고령 사회 진입을 하는 반면에 현재 출산율은 0.98입니다. 그리고 재가 서비스 부족으로 인해서 가족의 부양 부담이 증가되고 보시는 바와 같이 사회적 입원도 증가하는 실정으로 있으므로 지역사회 통합 서비스를 제공함으로써 이 사업을 지역에서 해결하고자 하는 부분입니다.
Okay, Korea is moving into super-aged society with over 10 million senior people by 2035, and the birth rate is only 0.98. This means that we need to society, the local level, we need to provide a better support to relieve the burden of each family.
Next, please. 사회 서비스원 설립입니다. 코로나19에 도움이 되었던 사업은 사회서비스원 사업으로서 2019년 사회서비스원 시범사업이 시작이 되었습니다. 그래서 22년도에 170개소를 만드는 그런 사업인데 지자체에서 설립한 공익법인으로 사업 내용은 국공립시설 운영, 종합재가센터 설립, 민간 서비스 대체 인력 파견, 긴급 돌봄 지원 사업 등을 하고 있습니다. 예를 들어서 서울시에서는 돌봄 인력 8명을 채용해서 코호트 시설에 서비스를 제공하였고 대구시에서는 긴급 돌봄 지원단을 모집해서 사회복지사와 요양보호사를 파견하였습니다.
Okay, so the first one is the foundation of the establishment of a social service agency. We decided this
from Japan side. Can you stop the presentation, please? Because of the sound is missing. Hi, Korean side. This is Mana from Japan. For Korean side, can you hear me now?
Next, please. Hello. Come on.
Hello? Is it okay?
Okay.
I mean, we are testing some howling. I mean, some. It is okay?
네, 장기 요양 시설에 대해서 말씀드리겠습니다.
잠시만요. Hello?
네.
오케이. 잠시만요. 제가 아까 그 말씀하신 데에 대해서 아직 통역이 다 마무리가 안 됐기 때문에 그러면 진행하겠습니다. 잠시 바랍니다. Okay. So regarding the establishment of a social service agency. The project establishing a social service agency began in 2019, and by 2022, we are going to build 170 social service agencies, and this social service agency will be operated as an independent entity from the local governments, and then this agency will provide the required services, including some care services or the dispatching the social workers. So, for instance, in Seoul, Seoul City dispatched about 108 caregivers, and then in Daegu area, they also provide relevant services.
Next, please. 장기요양 시설에 대해서 말씀드리겠습니다. 코로나 감염병이 발생한 후에 저희 정부에서는 감염병 관리 지침과 사회복지 서비스를 위한 공동 대응 지침이 있었고, 건강보험공단에서는 입소시설 감염병 관리 요령 11가지가 있었습니다. 제가 운영하는 성암노인요양원 사례에 대해서 말씀드리겠습니다. 저희 요양원은 정원은 70명이고 평균 연령이 88.7세로 대부분 후기 고령자이고 코로나 감염 시 사망의 리스크가 가장 높기 때문에 정부에서는 우선적으로 시설의 지원 100%, 노인 84%, 아스트라제네카로 3월 9일 1차, 5월 26일 2차 접종을 마친 상태입니다.
Okay. I'm going to make introduce cases of my Cheongam Nursery Center. Okay, we have about 70 patients over here, and then they are aged over 80. So we face significant risk because of COVID-19. However, unfortunately, last March and the 5th, by the end of the 5th, about 40% of the patients, they finished. About 100% of the patients they finished AstraZeneca the vaccination.
Next, please. 대처 방법으로는 시설에서 시설 방역 차원에서 서비스가 지속될 수 있도록 감염병 교육을 함께하고 감염병 관리 대책위원회를 설치하였으며 방역 관리사를 선정하고 전문 소독 업체를 계약하고 열 체크기를 도입하고 식사시 칸막이 설치를 하였으며 격리실은 2곳을 확보하였고 직원들은 매일 구청에 동선을 보고하였으며 직원들은 주 1회 PCR 검사를 하였고 직원이나 가족이 확진자와 접촉 시에는 2주간 자가격리를 하였습니다.
Okay, here's more detailed information. Okay, we provide the training or education regarding the infectious disease, and we formed an infectious disease committee internally, and we hired the quarantine manager to better control of it, and we introduced the sanitation process so that every visitor should check their heat, the body heat. They enter the facility, and then we have assigned to a kind of isolated room for isolation of those infected, and then we regularly report the situation of the center to the local government, and then every employee of our center should receive the PCR test once a week. And if they contact the confirmed patient, they should self-quarantine themselves for about 2 weeks.
업무 내용의 변화로는 우회례나 퇴원 후에 3일 격리를 시켰고 직원이 프로그램과 방역 업무를 겸임하게 되므로 프로그램이 축소되었으며 보호자와 화상 통화를 하였고 AI 챗봇을 이용해서 어르신들의 우울증을 예방하였습니다.
And then the 3-day quarantine procedure was complied with, and then the program manager had to run both the programs and the quarantine processes. And we also used AI or the other online to better communication with the guidance.
시설의 애로사항은 초기에 방역 물품 부족과 대체 인력 부족이었었습니다. 그로 인해서 입소율이 저조하게 되었고 보호자는 면회를 못해서 노인이 점점 중증화되어 갔습니다. 그럼으로써 자연히 공실이 발생해서 운영에 차질이 많았었습니다. 특히 어려웠던 점은 응급실 병원의 진료 거부로 인해서 오랜 시간을 대기하거나 입원할 수 있는 병원을 찾는 일이었습니다. 그리고 직원들이 프로그램을 하거나 방역 업무를 동시에 하는 피로도가 높았다고 할 수 있습니다.
And another problem that we experience is the lack of warranty supplies and the lack of the professional manpower. And the families of the elderly, they had to less visit because of the quarantine process, and that led to some difficulties in the operation of the facility itself. And another difficulty that we experience is that many are room of hospitals. They refuse to see the patients, all the patients, because of the quarantine process, and it was very difficult to be hospitalized in major hospitals. So that exacerbated the fatigue of our people.
Next, please. 보시는 바와 같은 사례였습니다. Next, please.
Okay.
현장 극복 사례.
네, 말씀하십시오.
현장 극복 사례인 코호트 격리 시설에 대해서 말씀드리겠습니다. 시설에서는 코호트된 시설에서는 구청이나 보건소 법인에 보고를 하였고 보호자에게는 문자 전송을 하였습니다. 또 내부 직원에게는 자리 이탈을 금지하였고 외부 직원은 자가격리 조치를 하였습니다. 만약 업무 교대 시에는 레벨 D 방호복을 차용하였고 종사자 전원 PCR 검사, 또 이용자 전원 검사를 하였고 혹시 밀접 접촉자가 있는 경우에는 인근 병원에 드라이브 스루 검사를 실시한 후에 시설로 복귀하였습니다. 그 밖에 코호트 격리를 하였고 확진자인 경우는 병원으로 이송했습니다.
Okay, let me introduce the case of cohort facilities. If we are set as the cohort facility, we regularly reported to the local government, the local healthcare center, and we sent the SMS message to the families of the elderly. And then the strict quarantine process was applied, including the level B, the quarantine, the workwear, and the regular PCR test. If the employee of our center has ever been the contact confirmed person, they had to go check tested and receive the PCR test to the private center.
코호트 운영 방식에 대해서 말씀드리겠습니다. 외부 컨트롤 타워와 네트워크를 형성하였고 직원 숙식과 휴게실을 지정하였고 외부에서는 드론 소독기를 사용하였고 직원은 52시간 초과 근무에 대한 합의서를 작성을 하였고 요양보호사는 24시간 교대 근무를 하였으며 이용자 간의 1인실 격벽을 설치하게 되었고 식사는 외부 식사를 도입하였고 대중교통 이용 금지 등을 실시하였습니다.
And more operational details. Okay, we formed a network with the external control team for the agency, and we ran a separate restroom and we introduced, as I mentioned earlier, sanitation devices. And if a worker works more than 52 hours, the worker should report the reason of those overtime work. And we ran 24-hour work shift system, and we've made an isolated room for a single patient, and we prohibited the use of public transportation to prevent the infection of disease.
문제점으로는 시설이 매스컴에 보도가 되어서 낙인이 되는 상황이 있었으며 즉각적인 선제 검사가 필요했고 방역 물품 부족과 인력 충원이 필요했습니다. 그 밖에 직원의 숙소라든지 직원의 정신적인 트라우마가 있었고 그 밖에 이동식 음압 음압기를 대여하는 필요성을 들 수 있겠습니다.
And then to prevent some stigma, our facility may be branded as some kind of poor facility regarding the process. So we introduced some preemptive examination system, and we supplemented required supplies, and we had to hire more workforce. We also had to care the mental of the workers.
Next, please. 저희 법인에서는 송파노인 복지관을 운영하는데 한국의 노인복지관은 지역에서 평생 교육의 일환으로 전국에 318곳이 있습니다. 이런 곳들이 코로나19로 인해서 비대면 서비스가 대중화되면서 유튜브나 또 문화여가 콘텐츠 개발, 온라인 강좌, 또 예방 중심의 서비스를 적극적으로 개발하고 새로운 도전이 이어져 가고 있었습니다. 그런데 이러한 변화는 저희 경우는 카카오 채널 아이디를 개설을 했습니다. 그래서 온라인 카카오 라이브 방송을 시작을 하였고 온라인과 자율학습 프로그램을 병행해서 운영을 하였으며 가입회원 회원은 1,076명 정도 있습니다.
And we run the elderly welfare center in Songhai area. It's nationwide. There are over 300 the elderly welfare centers over there, and the centers serve the role as a kind of a life learning center. And because of COVID-19, we provided the content learning courses through. We provide some courses including yoga, and then other online classes. And we also provided some educational content to prevent the infection of the COVID-19. And because of this, we started to open the Kakao channel ID to provide Kakao live broadcasting. This Kakao live channel is to provide, promote more autonomous learning for those audience. Now the total number of audience is over 1,000.
변화됐는데 온라인으로 보통 프로그램은 변화되었지만은 재가 서비스는 오히려 증가한 추세였습니다. 특별히 독거 어르신을 위한 맞춤 돌봄 서비스는 생활지원사 49명이 600명의 어르신을 서비스를 제공하였는데 특히나 IoT 기기 도입은 노인이 48시간 내에 발견하는 고독사 예방과 배회 노인 조기 발견의 안전망을 구축하는 데 도움이 되었습니다.
And we also invented a kind of a customized care service for the elderly. Currently, about 49 social workers, caregivers, they provide care service for whopping 600 the old people. And for better care service, we introduced IoT system. So within 48 hours, we can detect some old person or senior citizens in need.
쪽에서도 신규 사업이 있었습니다. 어르신 정책 모니터링 사업이나 키오스크 교육. 이 교육은 어르신이 햄버거나 커피를 주문할 때 연습하는 그런 기기인데 그런 것들도 교육을 하고 온라인 복지 박람회도 하였습니다. 그리고 골든서클 프로그램 같은 것은 공동모금 후원으로 많은 사업을 했는데요. 이 코로나19 복지 분야에서도 4차 산업 신기술 도입성을 인식시키는 하나의 계기가 되었습니다.
Okay, these are some new projects that we launched. First, the policy monitoring program. Second was the training how to use kiosks. The kiosks in some kind of a hamburger chains or coffee chains. Many elderly people they have difficulties in using kiosks. So we introduced this kind of program. And then we also launched the online welfare exposition. And another program is the
program. Anyway, because of COVID-19, we introduced the fourth industrial revolution technologies to provide a better welfare service.
Please. Next. 네. 그런 사진들이었고요. Next, please.
These are pictures.
Next, please. 마지막으로 치매 안심센터에 대해서 말씀드리겠습니다. 안심센터의 사업 내용은 치매 치료비 지원, 대회 인식표 배부, 쉼터, 그리고 사대 관리, 예방 관리, 가족 지원 이런 것들을 하고 있는데요. 현재 한국의 치매 유병률은 0.3%고 80만 명이 있습니다. 정부에서는 2017년 공약 사업으로 치매 국가 책임제에 따라서 전국에 250개소 보건소에 환자와 가족을 나누는 목적으로 치매 안심센터가 설치되었습니다. 그러나 코로나19로 인해서 안심센터가 휴관이 장기간됨으로 인해서 치매 사각지대 공백감 감소와 치매 악화 방지를 위해서 치매 관리 사업을 실시하였습니다. 보시는 바와 같습니다.
Okay, because experiencing the COVID-19, we enhanced our support program for the patients with dementia. So this is the Dementia Relief Center. Okay, this is the role of Dementia Relief Center is to provide this financial support for those who need and provide training program to prevent the dementia and to provide some support for the families of the patients with dementia. And nationwide, according to statistics, there are about 830,000 patients with dementia, and starting from 2017, the central government decided to provide support utilizing the 250 healthcare services center in each area nationwide, and these areas are being used as dementia relief center.
Next, please. 사진에 보시는 바와 같이 여러 가지 사업을 하고 있었습니다. 이와 같이 복지 현장에서는 코로나19 팬데믹으로 비대면 서비스에 대한 다양한 프로그램을 실시하면서 센터에서는 새로운 경험을 하게 되었고 어르신 환자는 우울감 해소와 삶의 질 향상에 많이 도움이 되고 있었습니다.
Okay, these are the pictures of the dementia centers, and then mainly we introduced a variety of content-less programs to help those with dementia. And then with this center, the patient with dementia can relieve their sense of depression, and then they can find the quality of their life.
Next, please. 청취해 주셔서 감사합니다.
Thank you for listening.
Okay, can we start? Okay. Hello everyone. My name is Jati. I am from Homeless Taiwan Association. Today I would like to talk to you about how the homeless has survived the COVID-19 lockdown. Next, please. Okay, let me continue. First, let me introduce myself. We are called Homeless Taiwan Association. We serve people on the street. We only have 8 employees. We have always served the homeless. In May, the pandemic broke out in Taiwan. The social care station in Wanhua closed down, so we reached out and asked if they need assistance, and we started to distribute supplies to the homeless. Because at the beginning, the homeless did not have water, did not have food. So we started supplying these important supplies to them. It's very important that they stay in place so that the homeless do not get dispersed into different parts of Taipei. And in June, the Taipei mayor started a program to offer vaccines to the homeless. But 50 to 60% of the homeless did not want to get vaccinated. Why? I asked them, Uncle, do you want to get vaccinated? No, because he actually exercised at 5 in the morning, and people in the park told him, if you get the shot, you are going to die, so he's not getting the shot. And some people also told them the shots are for young people only. They get a lot of misinformation. They don't have the mobile phone to get the latest information from our epidemic control center. They cannot find the correct information about vaccination. Because of that, most of them did not want to get vaccinated. As a social worker, I was very anxious about this. I worried about whether they would die in this outbreak. So every evening, I would stay in the streets. I tried various things. For example, I invited doctors, physicians to visit them in the street. We also prepared flyers to translate the professional information into elementary school level so that they can get the information. When we gave out supplies in the evenings, we also tried to do health education outreach. But this idea that if they get the job, they would die, this idea has stayed with them. So we thought about various ways. Next slide, please.
所以大家等一下会看到
Later on, you are going to see the questionnaire that we put out. This is actually not a professional study. This is actually one of my treatments. If the homeless fill out the survey, they would get $100 NT. So this was just one incentive. This questionnaire, the survey, talked about how they got information about the pandemic. We also asked them about their information. We have a pre-test and post-test. For example, how much they know about COVID-19. We provide the correct information and do the post-test. Through this survey, we try to give the right information to the homeless people so that we can better treat or better adapt to the next outbreak. I don't want to talk too much about the questionnaire. Next.
Oh, 好，我讲慢一点。好，那首先呢
First of all, about the vaccination. In the questionnaire, our goal is to increase their willingness to get shots.
好，我们希望可以增加他打疫苗。
We want to increase their willingness to get shots. We want to give them the correct information. We also want to ask about how they get their information and supplies. Because a lot of social service providers actually closed their stations. So we wanted to understand how the homeless got their supplies. In Huanghua, the homeless in Taipei City, we have about 800 homeless people, and we got the results from around 200 people. Next slide, please.
好的，那这个是我们的研究。
This is our survey method. Next.
这边的话，我们有。
Here are some of the questions on the survey. We try to understand their understanding of COVID-19. For example, what kind of things are contradictions for the COVID-19 shots? For example, history of severe allergic reactions. These people tend to be old, and they tend to live in very noisy environments, buses buzzing by. So a lot of time we try to tell them the right information. Uncle, it's 1992. It's now 1999. Please repeat after me. The hotline is 1999. But still, they got the wrong information. So it's very difficult to provide the right information. Next. But there is one piece of good news. Next.
就是根据这个问卷
，based on survey results. We actually did not expect much, but you can see the difference between pre-test and post-test. So an increase of one-third. It actually shows that the survey worked. Next slide, please.
那我们也好奇了，
We were also wondering, during the outbreak, perhaps they were more depressed because they might be unemployed or maybe their income got dwindled. So actually an additional 30% of them got unemployed, and their housing also got affected. For example, their homeowners or their landlords got affected, so their housing became affected. I assumed that they would be more depressed, but actually about 40% of them were just like before. They were not affected by the outbreak. And about 30% of them said, yes, their life got worse because of the pandemic. Our assumption is that some of them actually were living like at the very bottom, so they could not get any worse. But then one-third of them, they lost their job or they lost their access to care facilities. So their emotion got affected. Next slide, please.
那我们在统计上发现哦，因为疫情而流浪。
About one-tenth of them actually became homeless because of the outbreak. So we call these the new homeless. And they were more irritable. They tend to lose their sleep. This was not what I expected. Next slide, please.
然后我们也发现。
We also found that female homeless people were more heavily affected. Based on my experience, women tended to be treated violently. They are more likely to be violated on the streets. Take myself for example. I remember once at 3 a.m. I was conducting the survey. I interviewed a women homeless person. She was crying. I ascertained that she was not sexually violated by the man next to her, so I could not place her in an emergency shelter. But she would say this man next to her would actually rob her of her income.
所以女性的无。
So homeless women tended to suffer more than men. This is one thing we observed. Women tended to suffer more during the pandemic. Another possibility based on experience is that 50% of the homeless women, they have psychological problems. So they tended to be emotional to begin with, and they got more affected by the outbreak.
然后另外一个是新冠疫苗的。
Next about the knowledge about COVID-19, or what should they do? What's the hotline for the pandemic control? What are the symptoms of COVID-19? There is a little difference between men and women in terms of their knowledge.
Next. 我自己想分享一下。
What I would like to share is about vaccine hesitancy. In the UK, women tended to be more hesitant. They are not willing to get shots. Even if we can cover 100% of the population with vaccination, 5% would be hesitant, and women tend to be more hesitant than men. However, based on our study here in Taiwan, there was a little difference between men and women. Half of them are willing to get shots, half of them are not.
不想打的人大概占。
About 40% of them do not want to get shots, and 10% of them are still hesitant. Next.
他们不想打疫苗的是。
Some reasons behind the hesitancy. First one, totally not expected. Based on my observation, I thought they were worried about side effects of the shots because most of the homeless people, they have multiple comorbidities. But the number one is, I want to get vaccinated, but I don't have time. This seems to be counterintuitive. These are homeless people. How come they don't have time? I think this is a very typical answer from the Taiwanese. Next. I want to get vaccinated, but I don't have time. This is actually just an excuse. They know you want them to get vaccinated, but they don't want to go, so they will say, I don't have time.
可能的原因
Another possibility is that in Taiwan, for the homeless people to get vaccinated, they need to register with social workers, and then they will be picked up at a particular hospital. So from registration to the shot, there's only a difference of 1 to 2 days. And sometimes on the day of the vaccination, they may get a job opportunity, or they may have to wait in line for a hot meal at a certain facility. So they would choose to wait for a hot meal rather than get vaccinated. So that's one of the reasons why they might say, I don't have time.
第二个不想打疫
Second reason, they think they don't get sick because for some homeless people, they don't have any human contact for the entire week. Sometimes when we interview them, they will say, you're the only people I've talked to for the entire week, so I'm safe, I'm not gonna get infected.
那有另外一个原因是
Another reason, they don't have enough understanding of the disease, so they think they won't get affected.
这理由就是
Another reason, I'm simply afraid of getting the shot.
Next. 好的。那
接下来
我们做了这件事情之后，我们发
After conducting the survey, we identified the primary need is housing. For example, although we have shelters for the homeless people, however, we have 800 homeless people and we have about a few hundred beds only. And of course, during the lockdown, the shelters got more restrictive. People need to have PCR test results before they can be placed in a shelter. Here's the thing. This homeless person has to get PCR tested, and during the wait period, where should they live? Where should they stay? But a lot of hotels do not accept these homeless people.
然后另外一个是
Another challenge is yes, we want to place them, but simply we do not have capacity. Sometimes they only have the upper bunks available, but older people could not climb up to the upper bunks, so they could not have access to shelter. Another challenge is the lack of information. They got a lot of disinformation, they did not have mobile phone, they could not get their hands on the right information. So bridging the digital gap is another challenge.
那我们未来也会继续
Going forward, we are going to work with the government. We want to have access to land so that we can increase the housing capacity and offer flexible employment opportunities. At the same time, we want to help social workers' ability to reach them. Homeless people in the shelter, they are more willing to get vaccinated because they believe in social workers. They trust social workers. That concludes my presentation. Thank you very much.
Hello, this is Bosco from Hong Kong, and I'm from a social enterprise called We Do Global. We Do Global established since 2011 and aims to advocate multicultural education, promotes cultural diversity and social inclusion in Hong Kong. So we train up people from different cultural backgrounds to become cultural ambassadors and bridge the cultural gap. And we arrange various activities including community tours, multicultural workshop, as well as training activities in Hong Kong. In 2020, since the start of the pandemic, our works were affected so much because what we did were previously conducting community tours, multicultural workshops, all would be focusing on interaction and communication face-to-face. So at that time, we suspended our face-to-face works. We started to collect and distribute anti-epidemic materials and supplies to the community members who are in need, especially the grassroots ethnic minority members. So during distribution, we communicated with different members and realized that many of them are affected by the pandemic because many of them lost their jobs as well as cutting down of their working hours. So we started to think, is there anything that we can collaborate with the community members and to support them during this difficult time? So during May 2020, we started the project called We Mask Action. So this project aims to train up the grassroots ethnic minorities, women and youth to become sewing ambassadors because we realized that they have the sewing skills and they have the passion in sewing as well, because many of their traditional clothes is very hard and difficult to buy in Hong Kong, and many of them chose to sew from home. So this is actually an opportunity for them to contribute during this pandemic time. And we work together with fashion designer, with experts from the fashion and textile industry, co-design and develop the culturally vibrant reusable mask. And we realize that training is very important because many of them do have the skills, but this is a new project for them, as well as we are looking for quality products because we would sell in the market and distribute and donate one for free when people buy it. So this is very important about the quality control, and that's the reason why we focus a lot on training the community members so that after training they can work from home to support. It would be easier for them to manage their time and also balance their family works as well.
媽媽話咧，佢即係一開始睇下啲口罩套咧，咁佢覺得好開心，可以貢獻到啦，係可以幫人哋嘅咯。同埋佢頭先都講，可以 feel 到佢係社會嘅其中一個部分嚟嘅。所以其實佢而家有機會喺屋企做嘢，幫下人哋，同埋亦都可以有收一啲financial support， 咁佢覺得好開心啊。
So we support the community members to co-develop and design culturally vibrant reusable masks through We Mask Action. And this project is supported by various people from different professionals and different industries, some influencers and celebrities as well. So there are more attention that people are paying to this project because of the meaning behind. We have produced more than 10,000 culturally vibrant reusable fabric masks, and with the buy one donate one format, we have distributed more than 5,000 reusable masks and other anti-epidemic supplies to the local grassroots community members, including ethnic minorities, families, and senior citizens. Besides the ethnic minorities, women and youth, we realized that because many young children, they didn't have the chance to go to school affected by the pandemic, so there were less chance for them to actually communicate in the local language, which is Cantonese. There is a need and a support needed to support them in advancing their Cantonese language during this pandemic time. And we organize online Zoom Chinese classes to actually read stories and to facilitate the Chinese learning during this time. In addition to the support providing to the ethnic minority children, as our organization's mission is to bridge the cultural gap, and we realized that actually the local Chinese children would be needed to support for their multicultural education. So during this time and opportunity, we worked together with a famous writer to compose a picture book which includes elements from different cultures as well as community elements in a very, very diverse community called Yau Ma Te here in Hong Kong. It can serve the purpose for ethnic minority children learning Chinese, as well as for local Chinese children to understand more about the cultures and to enhance their cultural intelligence.
We read from this side. 天后古廟。地圖。地圖。Where was it?
Ask your friends. Let's
Excellent. Very good. Give me a high five. It's the freshman.
To encourage them to actually meet and interact with people from different cultural backgrounds. No need to be scared, just be bold to step out of their comfort zones and to greet and meet new friends in the community. So during the pandemic, we see there are threats, but at the same time, it creates opportunities for We Do Global as well, from purely conducting tours, workshops, or service type of programs, and to convert into making products, creating different classes and storybooks, picture books for the people in need. So it is more comprehensive for our work to support people from diverse backgrounds. We realize that there are other community members, such as senior citizens. They are affected by the pandemic because they have less chance to actually go outside, to meet with people, to talk to people, to actually do exercises. So we empower our youth, who are the cultural ambassadors and our ethnic minorities, to actually reach out to them, to conduct different cultural activities and experience by collaborating with the university here in Hong Kong to create programs to support the elderly, at the same time the youth from different cultural backgrounds. So it is a more diverse and inclusive programs that we create during this time. And it is also our organization, We Do Global's mission, is to create happiness and a diverse and inclusive society, especially now during this difficult time, to support members from all walks of life, especially the ethnic minorities, as well as the senior citizens here in our community.
One workshop which was, I found it very interesting and also very meaningful was when we taught the elderly how to use Zoom, because for their generation, the technology is still very new. So when we are teaching them, they found it very interesting and they were very happy about it. Through this service learning program, I got to understand the elderly and the problems they face. So I think after this service learning program, I will understand my grandparents more, and maybe next time if I see they are carrying something heavy, I will go ahead and help them, because now I know what they go through and the struggles they have and the difficulties they face.
同埋啲後生就一齊玩，係啊，一齊玩啊，溝通啊，有時同佢傾偈，佢哋又好友善，同我哋問候我哋啊，教我哋啊咁。
希望你哋仲有機會多啲嚟同我哋啲長者係啦玩下。
有時我哋長者同長者之間咧都可以識到嘅，即係咁多次咁樣活動咧係識咗好多朋友嘅。
So this pandemic may bring us a lot of challenges to our lives, into our works, to everything in the society. But at the same time, it also creates opportunities. So there is silver lining in every cloud. And we realize that as long as we have the passion and we understand the community members, what they need, and we try to pull together different stakeholders, discuss and work together, and to create more innovative ideas we can ever imagine, we can better support the society and create even more innovative ideas. So we look forward to further collaborating with more organizations and even beyond Hong Kong in Asia Pacific to actually foster collaborations and support our world together. Thank you.
Hello everyone. My today's topic is social workers' career development in Mongolia, challenges and opportunities. Before start the main topic, I would like to share some information about social work development in Mongolia. As may all of you know, 1999 Soviet Union collapses and Mongolia became an independent country, and Mongolian socio-economic transition were started. In this time, we had several social issues such as poverty and unemployment. However, we had that issues in 90s, and we have still some of the issues even today. For example, 29.6% of the population lives below the national poverty line. The proportion of employed population below $1.9 purchasing power parity a day is 0.7%, and 37.6% out of the entire population of Mongolia is the children aged 0 to 18. However, 82.8% of them experienced some forms of violence, and 31.4% out of the cases were associated with physical violence. 31.2% of Mongolian women experienced physical and or sexual violence by their intimate partner in their lifetime, which is over than 30%. Average of international level and experiencing rate of any forms of violence is 57.9% through the country. So, because of that social problems and issues, there were urgent need for social work development in Mongolia, and in social work, professional social work has established in 1996 in Mongolia. Researchers and academics has divided into two stages of social work development in Mongolia: pre-professional and professional. To become a professional social work stage, there were several milestones in this field. For example, professional social work education programs have established, and governmental regulations and sanctions which is related to social work has developed, and funding of social work associations and institutionalization of profession, academic achievements, and therefore social work have developed not only for general social work as a general social work, but also social workers into different fields such as welfare, health, law enforcement, and education in Mongolia. Nowadays, about 30,300 social workers working in Mongolia in Mongolian state organizations such as welfare, education, healthcare, and law enforcement. And 300 social workers are working in the non-governmental organizations and community organizations and international organizations in Mongolia. There are three main levels of social work practice in Mongolia has developed for last 20 years. And in the macro level, clinical social work, psychiatric social work with individuals and families, and hospital social work. In the meso level, school social worker, community social worker, welfare social worker, child protection social worker. And the macro level, administration, policy making and planning, research and academics, and advocacy. So those levels of social work practice have developed, which I called it with blue. It's the most popular practice in Mongolia. I would like to share one example. What are the rules of social workers in healthcare in Mongolia? Mongolian health social workers working work in four major fields of social work roles as clinic social work, supervision, community work, and administration. It differs which levels of healthcare system they are working for, primary, secondary, and reference levels. Social workers who are working in a primary level, they usually work, their roles are usually community and administrative roles, and social workers who are working in the secondary and reference level hospitals, there are the clinical and supervisional rules are more dominant. However, administrative rules are in same in the each levels of healthcare system. And for the academic career development for social workers, we have bachelor's program in social work, master's program in social work, and PhD in social work. After bachelor's program, the social workers can learn specialized trainings and continuing education trainings. In terms of numbers, there are 19 social work degree programs in Mongolia, including 12 bachelor program, 5 master's program, and 2 PhD program. For the career development for social workers, there are main 3 levels of career development. And first, work as a social worker who work about 3 years in the social work field, usually in the primary level, and social workers usually who are newly graduates. For the next level, social workers who are working 3 to 5 years and their salary higher than they started about 15% and work at the districts and IMG levels. It's called senior social workers. And the next level is supervisor social workers. Supervisor social workers who are working over more than 5 years, and their salary hires 30% of than they started, and they work as a district and state levels. So it is a social work career development in Mongolia, but in this career development is different in each field of social work. So that's why I put it as tentative. Challenges and summary. To develop career development in Mongolia, we have to do several things, such as determine social work core competences in each academic degree levels, determine career pathway for the main social work fields, continuing education system for social workers. However, the milestones in social work career development in Mongolia are apparent in some aspects of academic and professional levels. There are urgent need to focus on developing career pathway and continuing education system in main fields social work in Mongolia.
Hello everyone. My name is Yasuaki Koyama, and I'm with the Management and General Affairs section of Tachikawa Council of Social Affairs in Tachikawa City, Tokyo. Thank you for your time today. I'd like to talk about the kinds of measures that municipal councils of social welfare in Japan have been taking to cope with the COVID-19 pandemic, with specific work we have been doing at our city. Broadly speaking, I'll talk about COVID-19, the situation in Tachikawa City. Tachikawa Council of Social Welfare has measures to cope with the COVID-19, as well as community welfare after the pandemic. These are the three topics I'd like to cover today. To begin with, here's an overview of Tachikawa City. As shown on the map, Tachikawa City is located in the red area, roughly in the center of the Tokyo metropolitan area. The area around Tachikawa Station is lined with various commercial facilities, but agriculture continues to flourish in the northern part of the city. The slide shows statistical data for this city, including the population and number of households. The population is around 180,000, and the aging rate is 24.65%. Next, I'll mention the situation surrounding COVID-19 cases in Tachikawa City. This graph shows the number of newly confirmed infection per month, the period from April 2020 to April 2021. This is a trend seen in Tokyo as a whole, but the number of newly infected people increased rapidly in August 2021. Following on from this overview of Tachikawa City, I'd like to now introduce you to Tachikawa Council of Social Welfare. We are aiming to realize its vision of establishing Tachikawa, a happy city where everyone can live a normal life. The Council of Social Welfare comprises of 3 divisions and 8 sections, with a total of 250 employees. We are promoting resident-centered community building by developing community work, casework, and casework in complex and multi-layered manner. In response to COVID-19, staff members are taking measures to prevent the infection by taking their temperature every morning, wearing masks, and thoroughly disinfecting their hands. Fortunately, as of the August 2021, no staff members have contracted COVID-19. Now I'll move on to talk about today's main topic, which is Tachikawa Council of Social Welfare's measure to cope with COVID-19. First, I'd like to say a few things about the Emergency Small Loan Scheme, a type of social welfare fund to help people out in daily life. This is a system that provides emergency small loans to households that are temporarily unable to make ends meet. As in the case nationwide, in Tachikawa City, both the number of consultations and loan payments increased rapidly in FY 2020. In addition, we have begun to receive more consultations from foreign nationals than in the past. Another scheme is Housing Security Benefits, a type of self-support system for people experiencing hardship. This is a system that provides rent subsidies to households that have difficulty paying rent due to job separation, absence from work, or other reasons. As with the emergency small loans, the number of consultations and payments increased rapidly due to the impact of COVID-19. These initiatives were taken on the existing system, but here I would like to mention some of the initiatives that Tachikawa City has taken on its own. The first is the Food Bank Initiative. The initiative started in 2017 when the Council of Social Welfare, NPOs, and support socially vulnerable members of the community and citizens came together to start food bank activities. The food bank has become a valuable social resource during the COVID-19 pandemic, and the number of users of this service has increased 2.1 times compared to fiscal year 2019. This highlights again just how important food drives and food bank initiatives are for social resources. As I mentioned in the emergency small loan scheme section, the COVID-19 pandemic has brought many foreign nationals to our consultation counter. As a result, we have come to realize that we have not enough information is being delivered to those whose mother tongue are not Japanese. Therefore, with the cooperation of NPOs and citizen volunteers who supported people with overseas roots in the city, we published the information on the emergency small loan scheme in the Council of Social Welfare Public Relationship newsletter in Easy Japanese, English, Chinese, Tagalog, Nepali, Spanish, and Portugal. Portuguese. Also, as the PR newsletter only contains a limited amount of information, we have utilized ICT technology to create websites in the 6 languages mentioned earlier. These can be accessed from the website of the Council of Social Welfare and other locations. In addition, we have converted these access points into QR code, which are also included in the PR newsletters. All translations are done by volunteers. Finally, I'd like to talk about the COVID-19 Community Support Fund. This is an activity that started at the request of citizens. COVID-19 has made it difficult for many volunteer activities and community activities to take place as intended. Even in such circumstances, the Council of Social Welfare received inquiries from people asking about what they can do to help those in need in the community, and we set up a project team to see if we could somehow respond to voices of such citizens with support. As a result of COVID-19 Community Support Fund was established to collect donations and provide subsidies for community activities, and we began accepting applications in May 2020. Thanks to everyone's support, we were able to collect 76 donations amounting to nearly 3.5 million yen in 11 months between May 2020 and March 21. The collected donations were used to subsidize activities that provide support for people with welfare issues due to impact of COVID-19. The photos on the upper right show the delivery of food and other daily necessities to a single-parent household, while the photo on the upper left shows the distribution of free lunches to those who are in need for food. In both cases, COVID-19 Community Support Fund was used to cover these activities. For those who made donations, we have prepared a booklet to report on how the donation received or utilized in the community. The COVID-19 Community Support Fund has been an initiative in which we at the Council of Social Welfare have learned a lot. Even those staff members who might have thought it's a pandemic, there's nothing we can do, or let's wait until the infection numbers go down and then see. Those people received positive comments such as, I want to do something to help, or I want to do anything I can. We were reminded of just how strong we in Tachikawa City are as a community and were inspired to keep moving forward throughout these programs. These are some of the measures that we at Tachikawa Council of Social Welfare have taken to meet the challenges of COVID-19. Next, I'd like to talk a little about community welfare after the pandemic. As a result of COVID-19, we live in an age where it is difficult to physically get together and being connected. Despite this, Tachikawa Council of Social Welfare, which aims to create community where no one is isolated, has developed several new initiatives based on the belief that we should not cease to connect people to people and people to information. Today, I'd like to introduce you to these 3 of them. The first is development new form communication using Zoom, as in the case with this conference, which enabled us to connect with people we could not connect to otherwise. The second is the new approach that combines traditional network of council social network with ICT technology. The photo shows the project with elementary school volunteers living in Tachikawa City becoming YouTubers. And we also call them volunteers, and interviewed who are interviewing council social welfare staff. The project combines 2 elements: volunteer experiences for elementary school students and publicity for council of social welfare. Lastly, we are working on enhancing the initiative we have taken since before COVID-19 and are continuing our activities to deliver information to many citizens as possible. This brings me to an end of my talk. Due to time constraint, I might not be able to give you all as much